the internet growing ceaselessly over the past few decades and other forms of mass media slowly becoming more shameless, media censorship is starting to become a huge issue to our society. Whereas some claim that media censorship breaks into our right to freedom of expression, others believe that decency should guide our allowance for obscenity in our media, that we should limit that expression, keep it from being expressed in such public veins as television and the radio and other forms of public media. Recently in the United States, several state senators tried to pass a law that would censor what people can say over the internet, but obviously that kind of law would be almost brutally impractical. How exactly do they plan to stop people from saying what they want to say? And should they even be allowed to try? What gives them the right to try and censor the web? Unfortunately, it's a little too late to protest. Censorship of the internet is already an issue, just not in quite as obvious a way as you think it is. Censorship is all over the media we consume every day, and at this point, it's not really an issue of when it exists, so much as how far we can allow it to go. Censorship is a slippery slope. How much do we as a society want to allow to be broadcasted? And how much can we allow to be censored before it starts to be a violation of our freedom? While many people can agree on a small level of censorship, like bleeped out swear words or black bars across adult content, how far can we let that go? What about subject matter? Like sexual content, violence, or crude humor? Katie Roiphe, American author and critic, says that media censorship used to run off of community standards. However, this is no longer the case. Now, she believes that censorship should be in the hands of the individual. If it offends you, you can always just tune out. As Roiphe said, regulating speech is too dangerous, and the alternative is much worse. She believes that we are too close to the time when Nabokov's Lolita couldn't find a publisher due to the obscenity laws. She takes the example of pornography. She doesn't believe that even such an indecent practice as that should be censored. Many supporters of censorship use the excuse of protecting women, but Roiphe finds that to be insulting. Isn't it a little condescending to assume that women need protection? And this question expands, do we, as a society, need protection from what some people see as indecency? Another popular view supporting censorship is that things like porn influence people's behavior, much like the belief that violence in the media can make people more violent. But Roiphe believes the idea is very condescending to people, that you think they see something on TV and they imitate it. Frankly, I think if that were true, pornography would be the least of our worries. And frankly, if that were true, pornography would be the least of our worries. Unfortunately for many countries in the world, censorship can have severe consequences. For example, in Iran, where in the absence of political parties, newspapers become a major voice for change. But censorship became a growing threat. Many reformist papers have been silenced by the various levels of censorship, and over 100 have been shut down completely. Their employers and editors can in some cases be put in very real danger. The articles must be exhaustively edited and filtered for all kinds of influences, everything from criticizing the country's leader in politics to the clergy in the Islamic Republic. The papers which don't comply are shut down, and it's not uncommon for the editors and chiefs of reformist papers to have spent time in jail for not obeying the censors. The next question is, of course, the relationship between censorship and new media. Censorship used to be a pretty easy process. It was simple enough to just ban a book and prevent it from being circulated. Now, however, with the invention of the internet, it's a much bigger challenge. New media is like the ancient Greek Hydra. Cut off one head, and two more sprout in its place. This is also discussed in the documentary You Can't Say That. One TV channel can decide that something is offensive and refuse to broadcast it, but there are hundreds more channels that may take a different view and choose to broadcast it anyway. This kind of private censorship is nearly useless with new media. One person choosing not to say something doesn't prevent hundreds of others from saying it nonetheless. This is where the far more dangerous problem of government censorship comes into play. And while many people believe you can't censor the internet, this is not necessarily true. According to the book Virtual Freedom, the common definition for the internet is a form for free expression of unprecedented scope and importance. While this is true, there are still ways to censor it. Private entities, like broadband providers, internet providers, email providers, and even search engines, which govern our use of the web, can still control which expressions are allowed. The potential for private conduits to censor speech in this medium is unprecedented, says the book. For example, censorship by private broadband providers. In one incident, Comcast managed to censor a huge amount of email communications from an organization called After Downing Street, an anti-war protest group. The organization tried to send online communications with thousands of supporters about their plans to lobby Congress for the impeachment of George Bush, only to find several weeks later that many of their intended recipients had never received the emails. Comcast managed to censor their emails by blocking delivery containing the words After Downing Street to any Comcast-based email address without informing either senders or recipients. Search engines like Google can get into the censorship business as well, controlling the pathways we use to find online resources and websites by manipulating the search results and rankings that organize the searches, and deciding which links to sponsor that will show up next to related searches. It can also use geolocation technology to block content based on the location of the user, making sites available in some countries, but not in others. Online censorship gets all the way down into the fundamental technologies of the internet. Censorship is carried out even on the level of internet service providers, who have the ability to censor the packets of data which form the internet, discriminating based on data source, destination, user's identity, data type, port, or content. They don't even need to directly censor something. They can just block or drop disfavored data, or delay the transmission. It's almost impossible to tell when that's happening. I mean, how often has a glitch resulted in something not sending? And how do you know if it's anything more than a glitch? With all these forms of censorship, the internet is in danger of becoming a form in which speech is subject to being entirely controlled by a few dominant actors, instead of being the open, public forum of free speech that everyone thinks it is and that it was meant to be. Despite all the progress that's been made towards free speech and freedom of expression, censorship is not yet a thing of the past, despite the birth of the internet and other such media that people believe to be immune. With new technology will always come new methods of control and new ways to resist that control.